Okay, wow. Thank you so much for that, Krista. And thank you, Nancy, for the song today. Our greeters were Chris Hutzel and Jake Church. Chris is with the Yakima Fire Department, and Jake is with the Yakima County Sheriff's Office. So thank you guys for greeting today. Next up to share some inspiration is Hall of Famer Rick Pennell. Rick is a past president from 1988-1989. Rick.
Well, my theme today is granted. I will never take the national anthem for granted. But what do we take for granted? Why do we take things for granted? Why do we take, in many cases, our lives for granted? Are we really that busy? Are we really that important? If so, why are so many people feeling lonely, angry, unseen? These aren't people, these are people from all social economic backgrounds, races, cultures. It's not just limited to one person. So maybe how can we show our gratitude and help each other? Maybe a smile to start feeling, making others feel better and you feeling better. Maybe a thank you and everyone who does even the smallest gesture or action for us. Let's treat everyone as our peer. Let's put the phones down at Rotary, and at Rotary, at meals with friends and family, maybe just for a walk, so we can focus on the present moment. Maybe a leaf on our walk, a cloud, or even a person walking by, or heaven forbid, a conversation without our phone. Maybe if we do all these small gestures of gratitude, we can see each other. Help others who are lonely with just a few words of greeting. Help others know what they are doing, no matter how small, is appreciated and valued. If each of us do these simple gestures, we will make others' lives better and our own.
Very nice. Thank you, Rick. So Rotarians can sit and guests, if you will please stay standing. We'd like to recognize all our guests today. They are our MVPs for today. Thank you so much for being here. You can go ahead and be seated. Thank you for being here. For those of you that don't know me, I am Sherry Bissell, and I am very proud and very honored to be the 107th, hi Brad, the 107th president of this club. We are the OG, so we are the original club in Yakima that was chartered in 1919. There are 45,000 Rotary clubs worldwide and about 1.2 million Rotarians, so Rotary's kind of a big deal. But we are the 22nd largest club in the United States and the 37th largest club in the world. So there you go. We have something for everyone in this club. So we would love to see you back here again anytime, and we would love to draft you on our team. I do want to acknowledge a very special guest that we have in the house, Mr. Jack Thompson, who is also, and he's like, what? He's also known as the throw-in Samoan, a very famous WSU quarterback, which is why I have to acknowledge him because I've got it on. And so we're very honored to have him here today as our guest. He went on to play for the Bengals and the Buccaneers. He is injured, but he is not on the IR because he's playing today because he's here and came all the way from Spokane. So thank you for being here. Okay, I do have a Jack Bloxam update. Jack did peacefully pass away on Monday night. So for those of you that were here last week, we honored him and made him an honorary president of this club. And we received a very nice note from his family. Actually, before he died, it was Sunday morning, and I just want to read that real quick to you. It says, "To Jack's Rotary family, Jack and Connie's children and grandchildren had the great pleasure to share your wonderful videos with Jack and Connie on Saturday. It was a wonderful surprise for Jack, and it warmed his heart to know that he is being remembered for all of his contributions to Rotary, even though he has not been present at the meetings for a while. He was especially pleased with the number of tributes that included Connie and their contributions to the community. Warm regards and thank you from all of us. And then they sent this picture of the place of prominence where that honorary president plaque is sitting in the house. So lots of thoughts and prayers for Jack's family during this time. Okay, I have some blue badges, so I would like to invite up Caitlin Beeler and Kate Irwin to get their blue badges. Caitlin is with Quick Lock, and she also manages our Yakima Rotary Club LinkedIn page. She started doing that as a red rookie, as I call him. And so she does that, which is very cool. And then Kate is with the United Way of Central Washington. Thanks, girls. Welcome to the blue. Okay, our holiday bingo party is next Thursday, right here at the Convention Center from 4 to 6. We do have sign-ups on the table, I think. Yes? Lorna's, yes. We do have sign-ups on the table. If you plan on attending and could just sign up, that's just going to help the committee with numbers. So please do that if you are coming. And then next up, to introduce another team member is Marisol Fast. Oh, there she is. I didn't see her for a minute. And Marisol is also in the Hall of Fame class too. That means she's retired. That's what that means. So she's gonna introduce another new member, Marisol.
Thank you, President Cherry. Fellow Rotarians, guests, welcoming a new member, it's always a special moment at our Rotary Club. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Susan Brown. Susan was born in Arizona. At the age of 6, her family moved to the Willamette Valley to a 10-acre farm where she learned the value of hard work by growing their own food, taking care of animals, and milking cows. After 5 years, the family moved to Hood River, where her father went back to his career of banking and real estate. There is where Susan fell in love with the outdoors and the art scene the region had to offer. So she started doing ballet lessons, sailing on the Columbia River, hiking extensively, and also taking advantage of the winter sports at Mount Hood. And also she worked at the Hood River County Library. Susan went to college at California State University, Bakersfield, where she studied education and dance. While raising her 2 children, Susan was involved with the PTA, and she was also on the board of the Children's Museum. During this time, Susan taught at the elementary school, and she also taught at the Columbia Dance Academy, okay? At this time, she also bought her first home and fell in love with renovating properties, okay? After the children left home, Susan started a new chapter in Yakima, where her husband, Brian Aaron, was recruited as Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. During the transition, Susan continued to teach at the Columbia Dance Academy and also started expanding her horizons into the wine industry. She was the event manager for Owen Rowe, and then she was the general manager for Denin Vineyards. Nowadays, Susan is managing the rental properties, and despite her busy professional and personal life, she still has time to dance, fish, hike, and she belongs to 2 book clubs. She is surrounded by a strong circle of friends, and with deepening community ties, she is grateful to call Yakima home. With her extensive background in education, decades of teaching, and event management experience, and her commitment to service, she brings creativity, dedication, and a strong sense of community to Rotary. Let's extend a warm welcome to Susan Brown, our newest Rotarian.
Okay, Marisol, for you, I have a sponsor pin that you can wear very proudly. And I have a lot of goodies for you. So I have your red rookie badge with your passport. That tells you how to be in the blue. Okay, and you can keep track of that. And then I have your Team Rotary playbook for you. I have your plaque to hang on your wall very proudly. And the infamous Rotary license plate frame, and as I tell everybody, watch the way you drive. There you go.
Smart.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marisol. Okay, now for a very exciting membership update. I want to welcome up your membership committee co-chairs and cheerleaders, apparently, Connie Phelan with Compass Financial and Melissa Brewer with MB Designs.
President Sherry, Rotarians, and guests, thank you for being here today. Good afternoon, team. Today we're here to celebrate a very special draft class, our brand new Rotary rookies. Each of you has officially joined our roster, and we couldn't be more excited to have you suited up and ready to play. This year, our club has set a big goal to recruit 30 new members. That's our end zone, our championship target. And thanks to your energy and commitment, we're already 10 strong. Solid first quarter with plenty of momentum on our side. To our rookies, you've shown up, joined the huddle, and are ready to run the plays that make Rotary strong. Service, leadership, and community impact. You bring fresh legs, new ideas, and the kind of spirit that keeps this team moving down the field. Your willingness to step in onto the turf and be part of something bigger already makes you an MVP material in our eyes. As we march toward that goal of 30, we want you to know you're not on the sidelines. You're in the game. We need your passion, your drive, and your voices to help us advance every yard of the way. And to our longtime members, our seasoned veterans, thank you for coaching, guiding, and blocking for this next generation of players. Together, we're building a powerhouse club that will make a real difference in our community. So to our rookies, congratulations. Welcome to the team, and get ready because this season is just getting started. With all of us working together, I know we're headed straight to the end zone. Let's keep pushing and recruiting and keeping the scoring wins for Rotary.
Okay, it's time to introduce our newest draft picks, the Rotary rookies who just joined the lineup for 2025-26 season. These All-Stars have signed on, grabbed their jerseys, and are ready to help Team Rotary march down the field. When I call your name, rookies, please rise with your offensive coordinator. Not that they're offensive.
Yeah.
They're offensive. Okay. The person responsible for teaching you the playbook, keeping you informed, and reminding you which direction the end zone is. Here comes our rookie roll call. First up is Lupita Carrillo. Rise with your offensive coordinator. Woo! Jake Church, I saw you earlier. Up you go. There you go. Thank you. Eugene Vigil, stand tall with your offensive coordinator. Woo! Turn the page. Thanks for the large font, too, by the way. Okay. Aw, Mitchell Acosta, where are you? Yay.
All right.
One of my son's favorite people, so therefore one of my favorite people, Mitchell. Caitlin Gottlieb, rise up. Where is she? And we've got Patience Karsten on your feet. Woo! Yeah, I love that. Mike, do I say Middleman or Middleman? Mittelman? Okay. Thank you. Kate Irwin, up and ready. Woo! Tressa's busy. Susan Brown,
Brand
Up.
We don't have a picture. Not yet.
the bobblehead. And Jane Sabata, rise with your offensive coordinator. Thank you. Let's give them all a huge round of applause. Rookies, thank you for joining our squad. Team Rotary is officially stronger, faster, and definitely more entertaining with you on the field. Welcome to the team.
Thanks, ladies. Okay, now for Sergeant at Arms. Oh, there she is, Miss Nancy Leahy.
Well, it is pep rally time, and surrounding you right now are your referees who are ready to collect dollars, so have them ready, please. Remember, these are dollars that go to Rotary charity. Well, these blue and gold glasses allow me to see all of you in shades of blue and gold. And I've got to be grateful to my husband's ophthalmologist, who is a Stanford Husky fan, for making these for Jim Leahy, who played for Ara Parseghian at Notre Dame. Everything was always blue and gold. And so Dr. Forrest felt that he should have glasses to shade those eyes. Now, I want to get to know the athletes in this room right now. So please, if you played on a high school team, would you stand up? Any athletic team in high school? Did you? Oh my goodness gracious. Athletic teams in high school, please stand up. You're a part of 8 million students who right now are high school athletes in America. Congratulations. Now stay standing if you were a college athlete. So would everyone sit if you were not a college athlete and pay $1, lift those dollars up, because we want the college athletes to stay standing. And now college athletes, if your team won a conference championship or a regional championship, remain standing. Otherwise, please sit and pay your $1. Okay? Now, for those standing, if your college team won the national championship in your sport, please remain standing. Less than 1% of all college athletes win a national college championship with the NCAA due to extreme competition. And we have, do I see 2 of you right here? Can you tell us your school and your sport and the year that you got your trophy? Okay, Paul.
I went to a
Ah. Phil. So congratulations to those two people with less than 1% chance of winning that. Yes. Oh, that's right. Thank you, Dr. Laverton. We have a big game this Saturday against Army. Okay, now really quickly, I need to test the knowledge of some of you in the room on your college athletics. And John Cooper, can I call on you, please, to represent the Big Ten Conference? Which college has won the most NCAA national championships? Was it UCLA or Stanford University? Now, this is for all sports, John, not just football. UCLA or Stanford University for the most college national championships? You are right. 123 national championships have been won by Stanford in 20 different sports. You guys don't have to pay a thing because John saved you. Okay, I'm going to the Big 12 now, and Jim DeGrasse said he would take this question. Jim DeGrasse, which college has the most played fight song? Is it the University of Michigan or is it Notre Dame? I'm sorry. It is the University of Michigan. Bunker could sing it for us right now. So please, everyone pay $1 if you missed that, if you had agreed with Jim. Now to the Pac-12, and Doug Picotti, you would answer this. How much is the highest paid athlete being paid this year? Is this athlete being paid $3.7 million or $6.8 million? Doug? He's absolutely right. You got saved. There you go. Archie Manning, University of Texas, $6.8 million a year. Now we go to the Atlantic Coast Conference, ACC. Dan Sullivan, representing Notre Dame. Dan, which college has produced the most NFL players in the history of football? Is it Notre Dame or is it USC? Did he say USC? All right, he saved you some money. Yeah, 532 NFL athletes, but USC's right behind him with 530. Last question, and Katie has said she'd help us with this. Representing the Great Northwest Athletic Conference is CWU. What percentage of college athletes are drafted into the pros? Is it 7.1 of those athletes that are drafted, or is it 2.2 of college athletes get to the pros? She's absolutely right. Just 2.2 of the college athletes go pro. I thank you very much for being my team today. Simply stated, together, everyone achieves more. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I have $20 here that I am going to give for what I call touchdown bucks for Rotary charities because my son, Zach, just got engaged this past weekend. So there you go. I thought, yeah, I can do this because I have the mic. So there you go. Okay. So next, to introduce our speaker, I would like to bring up a board director and chair of the Rotary Education Committee. He is with the Yakima Valley Sports Commission, Mr. Rich Austin.
Thank you, President Sherry, Rotarians, and guests. It's great to look out here and see all these different jerseys and shirts, and you can kind of tell when he hasn't picked up his dry cleaning, because that's when John Cooper breaks out that Ducks jersey. you can't wear that and not expect a shot or two. It's my pleasure to introduce John Canzano. He'll be coming up here in just a couple minutes, and we did have an extensive bio in the tutor, and so I'm not going to go over all the awards that John has won during his career, but if I did, he wouldn't be able to speak for more than a couple minutes. But he's worked at 6 daily newspapers, including the San Jose Mercury News and the Fresno Bee. He covered Notre Dame football and Indiana basketball while Bobby Knight was coaching. I think one of the most fascinating things that I know about John is he's a member of the Baseball Writers of America. He holds a Baseball Hall of Fame vote and is a voter for the Heisman. He's also covered many Olympics, Super Bowls, Final Fours, things like that. And John, you probably don't remember this, but in 2005, you went to the Final Four. Carolina beat Illinois, and you actually brought me some streamers and confetti back, which I still have to this day. So that kind of shows you what a great guy he is, because he's there working, and that's very regimented with the interviews and your time that you can spend with the athletes and the coaches. So that was something that always really touched me. John is a 17-time Associated Press Sports Editor Award winner. He's won in 4 different categories. He just does some incredible things. And he started with the Oregonian in Portland in 2002 and worked there for 20 years. And I think what most of you will really be interested in to hear from John is he started his own website, johncanzano.com, and it's the #1 ranked sports-related Substack. And he has over 50,000 subscribers. And I told you I wasn't going to use this, John, but sorry if I steal it from you. But at the Oregonian, his columns received 5 to 6 million unique views per year, and now he's receiving over 12 million each year. In 2022, he also started a college football podcast with the San Jose Mercury News' John Wilner called Canzano and Wilner, the podcast. You need to check that out. But the biggest thing you really need to check out is his website. You can find some great features there. You can find breaking news. You can find some wonderful and touching stories. And I think the biggest thing you can see with John's work on his website is he has the best Pac-12 coverage available. He's the most knowledgeable and powerful voice covering the old Pac-12 and the reformation and building of the new Pac-12. And I don't think the conference would be on its way back without John and his coverage. And he just has so many contacts. He knows so many people in the sporting world in the Pac-12. And I know he just interviewed the commissioner last week. There's a video available of that. And I think they were in the location of the forming of the Pac-12 back in the day when it was, I think, the Pac-4 with 4 schools there. But part of what he did is he also went to the Whitman County Courthouse in Colfax, and I know a few of you Cougs have probably stopped there to pay speeding tickets on the way through. But he covered that whole process, and that just shows a lot that somebody would go to that step to cover everything. And I had a chance to meet John when I went down to the Portland Trailblazers in '03, and that was at a time when the team was in a little bit of a flux. The players were getting into some trouble, and the organization was making some questionable decisions, and it was kind of a unique time. And I sat down with my mentor there, a gentleman by the name of Chuck Charnquist, who had been with the team ever since the first season. And Chuck kind of gave me the rundown of everyone, who I would be working with and what they were like. And when it got down to the Oregonian and John, Chuck was a straight shooter. Chuck said, "You're really going to like Canzano. He's a great writer, an even better person, and he knows what he's talking about." And I found that to be more than true. John has been a good friend over the years. Every time I would go back, always very pleasant. But the most fascinating thing about John, I think, is to watch his interaction with people. He treats them with respect. He treats them with professionalism. He knows what to ask. He knows what to follow up and which route to take. And it's just really fun to watch him deal with the different players and the different coaches and the front office personnel. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the man himself, but please welcome John Canzano.
Man, I really appreciate you guys having me here, and I get to do a lot of cool things. This is just to see so many people here with all the different jerseys on, and allegiance, and the passion, and Jack on crutches crawled here to be here today, so thank you, Jack. I get to do a lot of cool things. I'm not a motorsports person. Rich mentioned 5 Olympics I've covered, 9 Super Bowls, but I'm not a motorsports person at all. But I got invited out to the Portland International Raceway one day because the IndyCar and the Champ Car people wanted to get more mainstream coverage of their sport, and so they designed a special Champ Car that can go like 200 miles an hour, and they had it as a 2-seater. So it's normally a 1-seat vehicle, but they said, we're going to put a media member behind the driver to give you the experience of what it's like to be going 180 miles an hour into a turn and have the car lower and the diamond brakes fire, and all of a sudden you're moving. And so, of course, I ended up out at the raceway. I didn't know they were putting me on like this flame retardant suit, helmet, and the driver, Sebastian Bourdais, who's an IndyCar driver, famous driver, I didn't know who he was, but he walked over and he introduced himself, and as they're putting this stuff on me, I'm like, what am I getting myself into? And he says, who's your favorite driver? And I said, you are, like right now. Sebastian, you're my guy. I had that same feeling today because I'm in Portland, and Steve Hahn and Barry show up on the tarmac there at Portland, and I kept waiting for Steve to go, who's your favorite pilot? Because I was going to be like, you are, Steve. Get me over there. Thank you guys for bringing me here. I called my dad on the way to the airport. And I said to my dad played professional baseball. It's really how I got started in sports writing is, my dad used to take me to bookstores. He introduced me to literature and Jack London stories and Steinbeck and Hemingway and also baseball. And so my dad played professional baseball. He was in the Mets organization in the 1960s. He signed out of high school at 17 years old, went straight to single A. He played in the Northwest League in like his second stop. He was in Tri-Cities with the Tri-City Adams, and he said, you're going over there. He says, you got to see if Parker Field is still there. He said, I played at Parker Field. He said they had no stands around it. It was just an outfield fence. So I was very pleased to hear on the way over that Parker Field is still there. I'll tell my dad that. But I find myself so often, thinking back to my childhood and how I got into this. And I know sports is such a big part. I love how everybody stood up for, you were a high school athlete, stand up. So many people stood up. I think it's so important to recognize the role that sports plays, and not just on our college campuses, which are out of control, but in our daily lives. And so much of that is supposed to be a diversion from the bad boss you have, or the relationship that is having struggles, or taxes, or death, or, sports was supposed to be this diversion, and now we find more often than not, especially in the Pac-2 or the Pac-12, we're finding all these cases of, man, this stuff feels like too much like real life. There's a lot of tragedy, there's a lot of setback, there's a lot of grit, there's a lot of adversity there. But I got to tell you, when I left the Oregonian because I looked around like everybody else did, and I said, hey, newspapers are in trouble. And I knew enough working at 6 of them that it wasn't headed in a good place. When the Oregonian hired me, there were 68 people working in the newsroom, in the sports department. And when I left, there were 9. And I remember going into the building on the day where I told him, hey, I'm going to leave. I'm going to launch my own website. I think my readers will come with me. The office, they had turned the lights off in the office to save 12 cents or whatever they were saving that day. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning or the heating system that was running. And I thought to myself, I'm making the right decision. But I didn't really know that until I started, writing about the Pac-12 really, and the stuff that I knew. And all of a sudden, I was in Las Vegas covering the Pac-12 basketball tournament. It was the very first event that I covered. I went to the arena. I came back to my hotel suite. I was staying at the Cosmopolitan. I'll never forget it, and it'll always be special to me because I wrote my column and then I hit the button to go down in the elevator. And when I got to the bottom, I looked at my phone and I saw subscriber, 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 subscriber. I literally got glassy eyes. And I haven't stopped with that. When people subscribe, I still have it enabled, even though there's 50,000 people, I have it enabled that I get an email every time somebody subscribes. And I love being in that personal relationship with the reader because it does remind me so much of being a kid, 9, 10 years old. My dad coming home from work, he got into real estate after baseball. He would come home after a long day. Interest rates in 1979, 1980 were like 15 to 20%. Those were tough days. My dad would come home with that sports section. He'd give it to me. He'd go change. When he came out, I was debating and asking who's starting tonight, who should be on the all-star team. It was the diversion that sports should be. And I really hope that college athletics gets back there. It should be. That's the place it should hold. It should not be $6.8 million in NIL money going to a player that probably doesn't deserve it. I'm all for revenue sharing with players. I'm all for equity, too, on the playing field. There's something wrong with a system, I feel like, that has the Big Ten and the SEC so far ahead of everybody else. And as I talk to Oregon fans and Washington fans, they lament that they miss the nostalgia and the history of the Pac-12 conference. Rich mentioned that, it was last week I sat down with Teresa Gold. It was the 110th birthday, I guess, of the Pac-12. I was going to say anniversary, but it's a birthday of the Pac-12. And, the hotel where Oregon State and the 3 other members got together, and it was called Oregon Agricultural School or whatever at the time, got together and said, hey, let's form this conference. Stanford was there. Stanford showed up. They didn't sign, but they listened. That's kind of Stanford's thing. They listened, but Stanford was in the room, and they joined eventually, but Cal was there. And there was something about being in that room. And right before we recorded the interview, I asked Teresa Gold. She spent the night at that hotel. It's an old hotel. And I said, she said, I felt something here. And I looked at her kind of like you look at a friend who's telling you they believe in UFOs or something. And I kind of looked at her, I said, what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, I just felt a connection here. And I think that there's something to that, isn't there? With our sports fandom and our allegiance, I think it's part of why you wear your jerseys and you show up in this room and you give each other a hard time even though you're friends. And you're in it together. It's such glue in our culture and our society, sports. I host a 3-hour radio show Monday through Friday. It airs, into southern Washington and all the way down to the, southern tip of Oregon and on 7 stations. And part of what I love about it is I love the callers. I love, and people, when I started, they said, oh, you're going to hate the callers. The callers are so annoying. Callers are crazy sometimes, but they speak for somebody. They speak for a faction of the audience that's out there. And I feel the same way about my readers, that, the cool thing about what I'm doing now is, when I send out a column in the morning, if you're a subscriber, you get it in your email, boom, real time. Within 10 seconds, you've got what I've sent to you. A lot of people will hit reply. And it's kind of like those office emails where you hit a reply all, and I will get back feedback immediately from readers. And it's wonderful to me to have that engagement with the readers. I did not have that at 6 newspapers. I started my career at a small community paper. It was the paper I grew up reading in the community I lived in. I was covering Little League games. And then I went to the Santa Cruz Sentinel in Santa Cruz, California, which is not a sports mecca. Santa Cruz, the banana slugs of UC Santa Cruz. I saw no jerseys for UC Santa Cruz in this room today. But what I learned at Santa Cruz was I learned how to write about people. I learned how to cover surfers. I learned how, to make a girls' water polo game interesting to readers who don't care about girls' water polo. It was valuable to me to pick up that skill very early on to be like, okay, how do I take something no one's into except the parents of the players and make it relatable and interesting? And then my next job was, I was sitting in the newsroom in Santa Cruz one night, and it was after the paper had been put to bed. And there's a real adrenaline rush in that. It's like if you ever had a class project in college where you're working as a group, you have this adrenaline as you're up late finishing the project. Every night it was like that in a newsroom. And I had an editor walk by me and say, "You need to get out of here." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just finishing up." He goes, "No, you need to get out of here. Like, you need to get out of this town." He said, "You should be covering a big beat." And I'll never forget that. That night I put my resume together and I applied to be the beat reporter at Indiana basketball and Notre Dame football in a paper in Northeast Indiana. Got that job, went there, and figured out pretty quickly I had no idea how to live in the snow. I had the best job, though. I had Bobby Knight in front of me on a daily basis, covering him. I had the Notre Dame football program. Bob Davie was the coach at the time. It wasn't like the heyday of Notre Dame football. These were not your years, your Leahy years, but this was a brand that people cared about. So I learned how to cover a big program and a difficult, big personality in Bobby Knight. And I will never forget Knight. You know, there was a certain excellence about Bobby Knight, and then he was a difficult person to deal with. And we all deal with difficult people. It was really an indoctrination for me into how to deal with a big personality who could be tough. And I remember Knight, he had the best record as a head coach in the Big Ten in the 1970s and 1980s. I was covering the 1998-99 season, and Knight needed to beat Iowa to have the best record in the 90s. It was very important to him, his legacy. And I'll never forget, Indiana was getting pressed. Iowa had Tom Davis as the coach, and they full court press all the time, and Indiana was having a difficult time getting the ball in bounds. I'm on press row, so I can hear everything Knight's saying in the huddle when he's talking to his team. He calls timeout. He tells his inbound passer, "I want you to take the ball," because the Iowa team had a guy that was 6'7" that was just right on the inbounds passer. He couldn't get the ball by him. It was having trouble. He says, "I want you to take the ball." He says, "I want you to throw it off his face, and then let's see if he backs up." And so, sure enough, I'm like, this is going to be interesting. I kind of sat up in my chair to see what was going to happen. Sure enough, the inbounds passer, play starts, the guy's waving his arms, and he takes the ball, and he just throws it off the kid's face, and it goes like 12 rows back. Blood everywhere, timeout, injury timeout, accidental. And, you know, they tape the kid's face up. They start play again, and he does it again, twice in a row. Tom Davis, the Iowa coach, got ejected. Both benches cleared. Indiana went on to win the game. Now, after the game, I said to Knight, I said, was that, you know, because he was talking about the excellence of Indiana basketball. I said, was that excellent? Was that an excellent moment for your legacy, or was that a moment? And he says, well, if you're going to play like that, then we're going to play that way. Well, I wrote a column that was harsh about Knight, saying, you know, yeah, it was excellent. He's been great, but man, not how I would want to win. So I didn't think much of it at the time, but a LA Times Magazine editor in California named Charlie Waters read that column, and he took it and he put it in his filing cabinet, and unbeknownst to me, I never applied for a job, didn't know the guy. Like 2 years later, I get a call from Charlie Waters saying, hey, I'm the executive editor now of the Fresno Bee. I want to bring you out for a job interview. And I got out there and I thought, what am I doing here? I never applied for a job. And Charlie he opens his file cabinet and he says, tell me about this column. And it was about challenging Bobby Knight. And I said, well, it was, you know, I went through the story, and he said, I want to hire you to be the sports columnist here. I was 28 years old. I was the youngest sports columnist in the country at a paper that size. He had Jerry Tarkanian as the basketball coach at Fresno State. That's why he was bringing me in. He wanted somebody who was not going to be afraid to call Tark on his stuff. Talk about a swing on the pendulum. Bobby Knight's over here, Tark's over here. They're both Final Four, national champion caliber coaches. Learned pretty quickly there's more than one way to win a national title. Tark didn't much care for the X's and O's. He didn't recruit for players who were in the huddle who were very attentive to what he was saying, but man, could he recruit. And the very first day I got in to the Fresno Bee, now the Bee was, as newspapers used to be, the Bee was special. Adrian Wojnarowski, who we all know from ESPN, was my predecessor as the columnist at the Bee. Andy Katz, who went on to ESPN, was working at the Bee. Jeff Passan, you now see at ESPN, was at the Bee. Eric Prisbell at the Washington Post was at the B. John Branch at the New York Times, he won a Pulitzer, he was at the B. We had a team on that sports department that was loaded. And you had to show up every day to play, or you got embarrassed. And so I would never forget the very first practice. I walk in, I don't know Jerry Tarkanian, I know of him, but Andy Katz had told him, here's John, he covered Bobby Knight. Practice is going on. I sat with Tarkett for an hour in the stands, and all he wanted to know was, what is Knight like? What is he like in practice? What is he like? And I said, there's no way he'd be talking to me during one of his practices. Let's start there. Tark and I butted heads. It was just a natural fit that way. But as Rich was talking about sort of the way I interact with people, I think one of the things I got maybe growing up in a sports family with a dad who played and had been in locker rooms and a big family, big Italian family, was, I learned how to relate with people and how to talk with people and how to have a disagreement without leaving the disagreement at total odds. It's important to me when I interview these people, even if I'm critical of them, even if I can't stand what they did, it's important to me that I've got a good enough working relationship that I can talk with them. And I think over the years, that's one of the things. Mario Cristobal called me one time at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was pissed. Oregon had beat Washington. Somebody had gone, one of his players had gone on Instagram Live in the postgame. You might remember this. Kayvon Thibodeau. He went Instagram Live and recorded Cristobal saying, that's why we beat those guys. They're a bunch of, whatever. And he really disparaging comments about Washington. And I had written about it. And then Cristobal called me. I was in my hotel in Seattle, and he called me. He said, why would you do that? We just beat Washington. How could you do that? I just think this is total. And I said, Mario, your guy went on Instagram. The world saw it. I said, I kind of have to address it. It has to be in the column somewhere. It's not the most important thing, but it kind of happens. By the end of the call, he's like, yeah, I get it. I understand. I think that's a very important thing. And I learned that with Tark, especially. Tark, I have 2 letters from Tark. The first letter says, I will never speak to you again. You're not allowed in my practices. I don't like you. I don't think you're fair. The second letter says, I will never speak to you again. You're not allowed in my practices. I don't like you. You're not fair. The day I left the B, I sat down and had coffee with Tark. And he was doing NIL before anybody else was doing NIL, okay? And his players, there was a point shaving scandal in Fresno. And Tark had this beautiful innocence about him where he could play like Father Flanagan, or he could play like he was just woefully unaware. You'd go to lunch with him and he'd walk out in the parking lot and he had that look like he didn't remember where he parked. But you knew down deep that he was sharp and he knew everything that he was doing. But Tark had coffee with me when I left, and I said, we kind of went through the times we disagreed, and at the end, he goes, you were mostly right. You were mostly right. And I said, that's what I'm shooting for, mostly right, But it was cool for me because years later, I was covering a Las Vegas Bowl in Vegas, and Tark had gone back to Vegas to retire. And I think Oregon State was playing somebody, or Oregon was playing somebody in a Vegas Bowl, and I was in the press box. And the perception was that Tark didn't like me, and we didn't like each other. And so all my colleagues kind of knew that, and they were like, hey, Tark's here. Did you see him? And when I saw him, he ran over to me like as much as he could in his 70s, and he hugged me. And it was like seeing an old friend. And I take that kind of stuff, like, that makes me feel good. Like, because I can tell he felt treated fairly, even though I was harsh on him. I aim for that in my coverage. I'm interested in what's going on at Washington State, particularly right now as they're looking for a football coach. I can tell you, I talked to Rick Neuheisel today. He's talking to the president. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I don't know if he's the guy, but he's in the mix. I find that interesting because we're in an era, as I told Neuheisel, we're in an era where, the old way of thinking of coaches is different. They're looking for CEOs. They're looking for an angle. They're looking for somebody who can fundraise. And he could be more of a program GM or a CEO than a coach. But I'm confident that the Pac-12 is going to have access to the playoff. That's a good start. I think the winner of that conference is going to be a really strong candidate to be in the playoff. We see Tulane and James Madison in the playoff this year. And I'm also hopeful that geography will win. Stanford coach David Shaw, the day the Pac-12 broke up, I talked to David Shaw, and I said, what do you make of this? Like, this was my conference. I grew up on this conference, and David Shaw grew up on this conference. And I said, what do you make of this? And he said, John, he said, geography is a force. He said, eventually, this comes back together somehow. I don't know if it means football splits away and then the old Pac-12 comes back together. I don't know if it takes 50 years, but you look, I'll go back to that meeting I had earlier this week. 110 years later, I'm sitting in a room in the cellar of this hotel with the new commissioner of the Pac-12, who happens to be a woman. Like, that would have been unthinkable 110 years ago. And Teresa Gold is saying, hey, we've got a media rights deal, we've got a plan. Oregon State, Washington State, which were left for dead in that courthouse in Colfax. Judge Gary Leiby should never pay for a drink again, by the way. They were left for dead. They have somehow reconstituted and have enough company in the room to play on and fight. And it's passion like that, and it's people like Jack who come from so far away that you can tell what it matters to them. Teresa Gold, after the Pac-12 splintered, I had breakfast with her. She had glassy eyes when she was talking about trying to get the conference back together. I've talked with Greg Sankey one-on-one of the SEC and Tony Petitti of the Big Ten. I've never seen glassy eyes. All I've seen is, these are suits that are geared about let's make as much money as we can. It means something to the Pac-12 members. I also think, I try to put myself into Oregon shoes and Washington shoes. I think the trustees, I've talked with the trustees, and they're like, hey, if it was my job to do what was best for everybody, I would have had a different vote. But I was charged with doing what was best for my school. I do think that's an important lesson that we all need to take away from this. Like, the end result of this conference realignment, the consolidation, is that the Pacific time zone and the West Coast has been marginalized. If you look at the playoff teams, there's one playoff team from the western part of the United States. It's Oregon, one brand. And maybe Boise State is to blame a little bit for that. But this isn't good for our side of the country. There's a lot of voices and a lot of advocates on the East Coast that will advocate for the Big Ten or the SEC. I do think we need to do more of this, what we're doing in this room today, and show the pride that you have in your schools. Ask what you can do. Keep talking about it. Keep fighting. If you're an Oregon State and Washington State fan, don't just go away. I got a call from one of the Power 4 commissioners after the Pac-12 imploded and said they should just go away. They should just join the Mountain West Conference. And I was like, ooh, that's not, what if somebody said that to the other land-grant schools out there, like Ohio State, another land-grant school? But I'm really honored to be in the position I'm in. I have fun telling the stories. I lean on all those experiences I had at 6 different papers. I'm still channeling what I learned in Santa Cruz. Like, I love telling a good human interest story and making people feel. I love the reporting and writing about big things, and I'm not afraid to go in there with those commissioners and tell them I think they're wrong and talk me out of it. But to me, there's small business owners in this room, I'm sure. Before I went on my own, I talked to small business owners. I met with a guy who owned a window company. I met with a guy who started an apparel company. I met with a guy who pours concrete, and I said, okay, what's this like? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what is this going to be like for me on a daily basis? And they were all to a person, they were like, it's going to be exhilarating. You'll be working for the customer that you're right in front of. It's going to be a lot of pressure. It'll be terrifying and exhilarating. And I was like, sign me up. I'm on board for that. So I just thank anybody who's reading and subscribing. I appreciate you. It means a lot to me. You're super important to me in a way that maybe readers have never been before. But I'll take questions if you've got questions. I'm sure you have some.
Well, Oregon State, 3rd generation, Oregon Agricultural College grandmother graduate. I just wanted to thank you for acknowledging my feelings of grief and pain that I'm truly deeply upset about what's going on.
Yeah. at some point, Stanford and Cal are going to get, I mean, they're already tired. The funny thing is nobody will say it. They say it privately. They won't publicly say it. When the Pac-12 imploded, Tara Vanderveer, the basketball coach at Stanford at the time, called Kelly Graves, the Oregon coach, and she was like, "This is not good." And Kelly called me, and I said, "Which are you guys gonna stand up and say something?" They were afraid to come out and talk about it, and because they've got their bosses saying, "We need to sell this as the greatest thing that has happened. Like, this is good for us to go to the ACC or good for us to go to the Big Ten." None of that is good. The football teams are making it, and in particular, Oregon. This is working for Oregon football. I don't think it's working for Washington. We're going to find out with a bigger sample size, but I do think that eventually geography and common sense have to play a role. Shipping your athletes across multiple time zones, especially when you are flying over and past a bunch of schools that you could compete against. Arizona, Arizona State, Stanford, Cal, they should be playing Oregon, Oregon State in baseball and volleyball and softball and these other sports. They should not be flying to the East Coast. A Stanford athlete that I know, a football player that I know, told me there were 4 games this year that they traveled to the East Coast. They got home after 3 a.m. in the morning. And that's football. Like, imagine the other sports going through airports and stuff. So I do think it happens. Problem is, I think it's going to take time for football to split away from everything else. It's a really complicated, there's Title IX involvement there. There are problems with that model. But I think, I do think geography, I'm leaning on, I think David Shaw's a smart guy. I think he was smart enough to know to get out. Like, he was like, hey, this is not going anywhere I can win. I need to get out. So I think eventually, yes, geography will win. You see it happening with non-conference scheduling. You're not, the schools are more motivated than ever to schedule in their backyard.
Along your career, I assume somewhere you met somebody that you were just in awe of, and the little kid came out, and you just kind of were like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm meeting this guy.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Frank DeFord, the sports writer. He was at Sports Illustrated and later on HBO Real Sports. I remember I had him in for an interview in my radio studio. And I've had a lot of interesting guests on radio. I had a producer who was not afraid to book in. I had President Obama on the show. I had, we went through a phase where we had comedians. It was Howie Mandel and John Lovitz and all these, comedians. But it was Frank DeFord because I had grown up reading him and I knew his name and I knew who he was. And I asked the stupidest question to Frank DeFord. I was so mad at myself because I pride myself on listening. If you listen when you're interviewing someone, that's the biggest thing that you watch an interview. Next time you watch an interview, and ask yourself, is the interviewer listening to the person they're interviewing? Often they are not. They're waiting for the next question. So, with Frank DeFord, I was waiting for the next question, and my question was, you're just a sports writer, is what I said to him, and he was like offended immediately. And I was like, well, I'm a sports writer too. I'm just a sports writer too. But it was really cool to me to hear his stories. He had a daughter he lost a daughter to cystic fibrosis very young. He wrote about her. He was I think the first sports writer that showed me you could write about people in that way that was really moving. And I've got like Sally Jenkins, who's, most people know, she was at the Washington Post. She's left there. She is an aunt of mine through marriage. And so, I find myself, I got to go out to their house. They live in like the Hamptons, okay? And Sally Jenkins has got this writing room. And I was like, let me just see where Sally works. I go into this room and it's like nothing like where I'm working. She's got a bookcase with all these fancy books and things around her that are very creative, an old typewriter. And I was like, I need to do that. I need to have more of that. But I think Sally's fantastic. Her dad was Dan Jenkins, who was a legend in the business as well. But I think from a writing standpoint, but then there have been other moments. Like I saw Michael Jordan's last game at Moda Center in Portland. And I'd grown up watching Michael Jordan. I still think he's the greatest basketball player who ever lived. And forget LeBron or Kobe, come on. But Jordan's last game, 2 things struck me. He was inbounding the ball. I was on press row, and he was inbounding the ball at one point. And a woman in her 20s was sitting courtside. And he was going to inbound the ball, and she leaned in and said, "Take me home tonight." And Jordan Jordan just shook his head and inbounded the ball. And I was like, well, I remember that. And then I remember he was leaving the court, and he came through the tunnel at what was then Rose Garden Arena, now Moda Center. And I wanted to see him leave the court, so I had left press row early, and I wanted to see him come through, like leaving the court the last time. If it were today, I would have put it on Instagram or TikTok, right? But I just wanted to see it. What did Jordan look like leaving the court for the last time? And he came through the tunnel, and he paused by the trash can, and he had a gum in his mouth. He took the gum out, and he stuck it on the side of the trash can. I'll never forget it. And you know how hard it was for me to not go over there and peel that gum off the trash can? I didn't do it, but to this day I go, should I have done that? Third story. I'm a sports card collector as a kid. I had a bunch of old football cards. I put them on eBay right around 2000, 2001. I put a bunch of cards on eBay. It's a stack of 1958 football cards. It sold for $58, remember to this day. The winning bidder was Bill Belichick. I got an email from Bill Belichick, who was then working for the New York Jets, who said, you know, do you want me to send a check, a cashier's check, whatever? You know, I'm working at the Fresno Bee, and I said, just send me a check. I didn't know it was Bill Belichick. He hadn't yet won 6 Super Bowls or whatever. But I got a check, a hard copy check from Bill Belichick. Muttontown, New York was his address. And like an idiot, I cashed the check at the bank and took the $58. I should have just kept the check. I could have sold that check today for far more, but it's the moments like that where you just kind of look around. If you pay attention and keep your eyes up, you'll see things. Yeah, right, I love it. I love it.
Such a disparity.
Yeah.
Or maybe such a disparity. What needs to, this is the Wild West, I think, of college football right now. What needs to be done to balance it out, to provide a little equity? How can WSU ever hope to compete against Oregon, and maybe even Washington against Oregon down the road?
It's a great question. You know, the Seattle Mariners did not have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, and they got real close, didn't they, to getting there. And I think what you have to recognize is, look at Major League Baseball. The teams with the highest payrolls don't always win. Yes, they have a tremendous advantage. The Yankees and the Red Sox, tremendous advantage. They can afford to have injuries that the Mariners cannot afford. They can afford that a player has a down year because they've got someone else. There's depth to the roster. They've got an extra arm that can benefit you when you play in an 18-inning game, as the Dodgers found out. And you know, they have the ability to have a two-way player, like Shohei, the best player in the game. So there are advantages that the places that are haves will always have. What Oregon State, Washington State, and the others need to do is they need to create just enough margin so they can be competitive. I think they need help. I think the system needs an overhaul. I would do away with NIL is just gift giving. It is not name, image, likeness. Nobody's really getting paid for an endorsement. It's a paycheck. And the revenue sharing within the athletic departments, while they're saying, hey, everyone can spend $20 million, not everyone really can spend $20 million. And I talked to Dana Altman, the Oregon basketball coach, this morning, 9 o'clock this morning. I was on the phone with Dana Altman. You know, they don't have the money that everyone thinks they have. Even at a have institution, Oregon men's basketball is looking over at football and going, they're getting all the money. So there's some of that infighting that's going on within the campuses themselves, where Dana's like, the perception is we have all this money. Oregon men's basketball has about $5 million on that roster, and 2 players are making $3 million combined. So there's not a lot extra to go around. So what I think needs to happen, though, is there needs to be some kind of salary cap. But I think that's kind of sad to say that, but Dylan Gabriel, the Oregon quarterback, I talked to him before the NFL draft, what was it, a year ago, And I said to him, you know, are you going to miss college? Because when you turn pro, it's going to be so much more complicated. And he just goes, John, he goes, this is the pros. We're in the pros now. And, you know, he was on like his third or fourth school already. And he was making, you know, more money than a lot of his position coaches, you know, as a quarterback at Oregon. So I think that there needs to be an overhaul that sort of, and the schools seem to be in favor right now. They know spending's out of control and the coaching salaries are out of control. They know that, but they're all afraid to be the first to go, we're not going to pay, because that's how you get fired as a university president, is when you come out and go public with, we're not going to join the rat race. That's the first, you know, that's right before you get fired. So I think it needs to be more of an institutional, we're going to allow the players to collectively bargain, we'll let them form a union, we'll put a cap on what they can make, it'll be part of the college football playoff distribution, and that's what it is. Because then that gives the Pac-12 and the American a chance to go out and say, hey, we've participated in the playoff, we need a bigger distribution for our conference members, so now we can be competitive in these games. So, but I think that's the first step. I think you're going to see intervention by lawmakers, and you're going to see more lawsuits, which unfortunately now it becomes less about sport. Yeah.
Okay, you answered part of that question. My next is the transfer portal.
Yeah.
How do you feel like that is affecting college sports? How do you fix that? And what's going to happen with Wazoo?
Yeah, okay, so I think Washington State's going to hire Elizabeth Cantwell, the president. I've got confidence in her. I think she has demonstrated that she's serious about this, and she's serious about sports. I think it's a big advantage if you're at Washington State. I had some frustrations with the prior president. You know, I thought he was a really nice guy, really nice person. I had a good working relationship with him, but he wasn't in it like she is. And so I think that's a good head start. The timing of the portal window was a problem. Now it's on January 2nd, but tell that to Washington State, who has a bunch of players right now that are getting recruited while they're preparing for a bowl game. It's a bad system. I think along with that collective bargaining, you've got to say, do they have to stay at a school for more than 1 year? Like, can we start, like, some of the coaches tell me they have 2-year deals, but Oregon State had a 2-year deal for Malik Murphy, the quarterback this year. He got $1.5 million. There was an option for the second year. He didn't even finish the year as the starting quarterback. So we go back to, like, you know, you have X amount of dollars to spend, you can't make mistakes if you're Oregon State and Washington State. Oregon State made a mistake, but that portal is a problem because it's unregulated free agency, it's every year, can you imagine in any other sport that they would do that? And by the way, let's open the portal while the season is still going on, and then let's open it again right before the season starts. Like, everybody be leaving for the Dodgers and the Yankees every year, and that's kind of what's happening in football. But I think I think it will be changed, because I think you're going to see some of the legacy programs like Alabama. Nick Saban didn't retire because he wanted to go on vacation and retire. He retired because, Mario Cristobal called me that day. And I said, why is Saban retiring? He had worked on his staff. And he says he's retiring because he knows he's not going to have the best team anymore. And his advantage is gone. So I think now that some of those legacy schools find themselves mildly disadvantaged, they will be crying for that equity. And I think Oregon State and Washington State, in addition to calling Notre Dame today, they should be lining up with some of those other schools and going, hey, how does that feel? How do we fix this? But the portal is a massive problem, because what are you doing now? You're just developing a player for 1 season? Dana Altman said it this morning. He goes, I used to have these guys for 3 years. He goes, I have them for 1. And they're not going to the NBA, they're going to some other school maybe. So it's a problem, yeah. All right, thank you guys, I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, John. I know we could just stay here longer and ask more questions and take all of your sports knowledge, but we have to get you on a plane, I know, as well. But we appreciate you being here. I know it's a super busy time for you. A huge thanks to Rich for getting John here. And an even huger, which would be called huger jihugic, thank you to Steve Hahn for literally getting John here, flying him over on the plane. So you're an MVP, Mr. Steve Hahn. So thank you. I end our Rotary meetings with what I call my play of the day. And today's simple. I don't care about your job, your political views, or anything else. I judge you solely based on which college football team you cheer for. That's it. So John Cooper, I think he left, probably because we gave him such a hard time, but I was going to say, yeah, I'm sorry for judging you, John Cooper, but quack. Our next meeting and last one for December and for 2025 is next Thursday, the 18th. And it's everyone's favorite holiday bingo party. We will be right here at the Convention Center from 4 to 6. We will have no regular meeting at noon that day. So we are going to eat, drink, be merry, and yell bingo. So sign-ups are on the table, so do that if you could. I don't think there's a committee meeting today. Okay, no committee meetings today. Thanks again, John, for being here. Welcome to Rotary. Susan, there you are. Welcome to the team. Thank you all for choosing Rotary today. And with that, game over.